The Legacy Superhero Season 1, Episode 6, The First Confrontation. "Morning, sunshine," said Christina in a sarcastic voice as she lowered her gun. "Up bright and early, I see. That's just what I'd expect from the famous Trickshot." Disoriented by her sudden appearance, I said, "Wait, why did you enter the room with a gun? Were you going to shoot me?" "Shoot you," Christina repeated. She glanced at her gun. "Not unless I had to. I just heard two voices in here and wanted to be safe." She looked around. "Say, where is the other person I heard?" It was clear to me that Christina did not know about TW, and I definitely wasn't going to tell her about him, at least not right away. I didn't know if I could trust her yet, and I doubted I could, even if she did save me. "Well, thanks for saving my life," I said as I hopped out of bed. "I don't know why you did it, but I guess it doesn't matter. I really need to leave now, so if you'll excuse me, I'm out of here." I flew into the air, but before I could fly out one of the windows, Christina thrust out her right hand and sent a flying green energy rope at me. The energy rope wrapped around my body and tightened, making me gasp in surprise before Christina yanked down and slammed me onto the floor. I tried to break free of the rope, but it was as solid as steel and even my super strength wasn't enough to break it. There now," said Christina, holding the energy rope with one hand. "I didn't drag you all the way up to the second floor of this building just to let you run away like this." What is this energy thing?" I said, looking down at the energy wrapped firmly around my body. "How are you able to do this? Do you have a device of some kind that lets you shoot energy or something?" Christina shook her head. "Nope. I'm a former superhero who took the superpower drug. I can summon solid energy constructs. Generally, I use it to create bridges and the like to help me cross gaps or fill in holes, but as you can tell, it's also very good for creating energy ropes and chains which hold down annoying brats like you. And it's way more efficient than normal rope, because solid energy doesn't break." I looked at Christina in disbelief. "So you're not only not an actual police detective, but you're a former superhero, too. What other secrets are you hiding from me?" Christina smiled. "More than you would ever guess. But it doesn't matter how many secrets I have. What matters to me is finding out what your secrets are." "My secrets?" I said. "I don't have any." "Yes, you do," said Christina. She pointed at my face. "Like what your real identity is, for one. I know you're not the original Trickshot. You're way too young. But I still don't know exactly who you are, though I have my suspicions. If you're so curious to find out who I am, why didn't you just unmask me when I was unconscious on that bed?" I said, nodding at the bed that lay just a few feet away from me. "I was completely defenseless for an entire night, and you obviously had access to me." "I tried," said Christina, "but unfortunately the mask seems to be stuck to your head. It wouldn't come off no matter how hard I pulled at it. It felt more like another layer of skin than a costume." Interesting. I had not known that my mask could not be removed. That was yet another one of the suit's abilities that TW had failed to mention. Then, again, it was hard to see how knowing that would help me, given how I had no intention of letting anyone rip off my mask against my will. "So I decided to wait until you were awake and I could interrogate you myself," said Christina. "And I will make you talk. I've got a lot of experience making people tell me what they don't want to tell me, and you're not going to be any different." "Why do you want to know who I am?" I said, turning awkwardly on my side to look at her better. "Why are you even after me in the first place? I don't know you. I've never even met you before. You're a complete stranger to me." "It's nothing personal," said Christina. "My boss just sent me after you for his own reasons. Well, technically, I'm not after you per se, but your watch." I glanced down at the Trickshot Watch, which was still attached firmly to my wrist. "Why do you want my watch?" "Because it's not supposed to be out in the wild like this," said Christina. "It's supposed to be kept away from the public. It's too dangerous to be allowed to be used without supervision the way you've used it." "And just who, may I ask, is your boss?" I said. "You're not working with the injectors, are you?" Christina snorted. "Those losers. Nah. I work for a higher power, one that doesn't make most of its money from selling illegal drugs to stupid kids. My organization is actually affecting real change in the world, change for the positive. Unfortunately, that change might be disrupted if we continue to let that watch of yours float around in public like it has been recently." "You're acting like I've just been letting other people borrow it," I said. "I haven't. I've had it for a while now and haven't even told anyone else about it yet." I almost told Christina that I had almost had the watch for a week, but switched out the words at the last minute in order to avoid giving her too many clues to my real identity. The less information Christina had about me, the better. So what? Said Christina. As long as you have the watch, there's always the chance that it could be stolen and used by the wrong people. So I'm going to ask you nicely to give me the watch. If you do that, I'll let you go without any further fuss, and you can go back to living your normal life, whatever it is. I bit my lower lip. Even if Christina wasn't working for the injectors, that didn't mean I could trust her. Given how she had already lied to me once about her true nature, I didn't trust her claims about her organization working for the greater good. Likely they were just as criminal as the injectors, just in more refined or less obvious ways. She's with Icon, said TW in my head. What? I said aloud. Christina frowned. What? Nothing, I said quickly. Just thought I heard you say something. She's with Icon, TW said again. That's who she's working for. Icon, I said in my mind. You mean the organization that is holding grandfather prisoner? The one and the same, said TW. I recognize her. She looks different from the last time I saw her, longer hair, for one, but I remember seeing an Icon agent with the same face as her when Gregory broke out of their prison. They probably sent her to get the Trickshot Watch back. Great, I said sarcastically. What should I do about her? Not give her the watch. For one thing, said TW. She may think that Icon is working for the greater good, but in truth, Icon's motives are far from pure. I don't know for sure what they're trying to do, but I do know that Gregory risked his life to send out the watch in order to stop them. I suspected as much, I said. Still, it's not like I can free myself. She's got me in a pretty tight bind at the moment, one that even my super strength can't break. Unless you've got a plan, it doesn't matter why Icon wants the Trickshot Watch back. I've got a plan, but it will require that you get close to her, said TW. I'll let you figure out how to do that. I tried to ask TW what his plan was, but he wouldn't respond to anything I said. It annoyed me that TW was not letting me in on his plan, but I decided to trust him for now and see if I could get Christina to pull me closer to her. After that, I would just have to trust TW to have a plan to escape from her that would actually work. Fine, I said to Christina. You can have the Trickshot Watch back if you want. For the first time since I'd seen her, Christina looked genuinely surprised. What? Really? Yeah. Really, I said. I shrugged. You've clearly got me in a bind here. I can't free myself and you are not going to let me go just because I asked nicely. It would be a waste of time for me to fight you, so you might as well take the watch and leave. Christina eyed me suspiciously. That's a rather abrupt change of attitude from the defiant kid you were earlier. I may be cocky, but I'm not dumb, I said. I know when I can win and when I can lose, and I will definitely lose if I keep fighting you. Christina smiled. Well, I guess you're smarter than I thought after all. Very well. I'll just bring you closer to me so I don't have to walk over there and get the watch myself. The energy rope began retracting toward Christina, dragging me across the grimy wood floor at a surprisingly fast speed. I kept a neutral look on my face, hoping to avoid tipping Christina off to the fact that not all was what it seemed. Luckily, Christina seemed to be so eager to get the Trickshot Watch from me that she didn't even seem to consider that this was all a trap. As soon as I was close enough to her, Christina reached down toward my wrist with a triumphant look on her face. Just as her fingers brushed against the surface of the watch, TW suddenly said, "Surprise." A bright flash of light exploded from the watch. My goggles protected my vision, keeping me from going blind, but Christina shouted in surprise and stumbled backwards. The sudden bright light must have shattered her concentration as well, because the energy rope dissipated as soon as she shouted. I jumped to my feet and immediately flew toward the boarded-up windows, intending to smash directly through them in order to escape. But just before I could smash through them, I felt two ropes wrap around my ankles and stopped in midair. Looking over my shoulder, I saw that Christina had fired two energy ropes at me, which were wrapped firmly around my ankles. Even though I was pulling with all of my might, Christina was somehow not budging even 1 inch from where she stood. "Nice trick with the flash there," said Christina, blinking rapidly, probably to get rid of the tears in her eyes. "But I'm not going to let you get away that easily." Christina yanked her ropes back. I fell back a few feet, but still strained to fly forward. But as long as Christina held onto these ropes, I was not going anywhere. It was only a matter of time before I either ran out of energy and gave up or Christina did, but given how determined Christina was to get me, I might give up before she did. But if Christina wanted me, then she could have me. I immediately turned around and flew toward Christina, rather than away from her. A shocked look appeared on Christina's face, but she was too slow to dodge my attacks. I slammed into her with my shoulder, sending Christina flying backwards into the back wall, where she smacked into it, and fell onto the floor, where she lay unconscious. As soon as Christina lost consciousness, the energy ropes around my ankles disappeared, and I turned and flew away toward the window. I didn't even hesitate to smash through the window and out into the city itself, flying in a random direction away from Christina's apartment as fast as I could. "See?" said TW in my head as I flew away from Christina's apartment. "I told you that Icon was after you. I was right." "I didn't say you weren't," I said as I flew. "No need to brag." "I know, but I still felt like doing it anyway," said TW. "One of life's greatest pleasures is to brag when one is right about something. At least, that's what I learned from my time with your grandfather anyway." "You should have learned another lesson," I replied. "Anyway, I need to land and get my bearings because I have no idea where I am." I landed on top of a nearby apartment building and quickly hid behind the large air conditioning units on the roof. I didn't think Christina was going to come after me anytime soon. But the last thing I needed was to be spotted by someone, even if that person wasn't associated with either the Injectors or Icon, because that would be a good way to get both of those organizations' attention on me. "All right, TW," I said, glancing at the watch. "How far away am I from my parents' house?" TW flashed into existence next to me. That was when I noticed that he was even fuzzier around the edges than before, which worried me, because I remembered what TW originally told me about how he didn't have much time left. "We are about 5 miles south of your parents' house," said TW. He pointed north. "If you go directly north, you should reach your parents' house in less than 5 minutes, especially if you fly at top speed." "Thanks, TW," I said. "I can't even imagine what must be going through their heads right now. They haven't heard from me since last night. I bet they have every cop in the city looking for me. Hell, they're probably leading the search themselves. I wouldn't put it past them." "Then why did you decide to stop on this roof?" said TW curiously. "Wouldn't it be better to fly straight home to show them that you are okay?" I leaned against one of the air conditioning units and sighed. "Yeah, but I can't do that without telling them that I'm Trickshot, and I still don't feel like telling them that yet. I need to come up with a good excuse for why I went missing, one that they won't question." "The longer you stay missing, the more worried your parents will become," said TW. "And the harder it will be to convince not just them, but the police of whatever story you come up with, because I guarantee you that the police will want to talk to you, especially if your parents have called them to let them know that you're missing." I groaned. "Yeah, I know. You wouldn't happen to have a believable cover story, would you?" "I was about to suggest that you tell them that you were kidnapped by Christina Madison, but then I decided that that might raise more questions than answers," said TW. "No, that's actually a good suggestion," I said. "My parents and the police already know that Christina is not actually a detective. If I tell them that she also kidnapped me and held me hostage in that apartment back there, the police will be on her trail, which will make it harder for her to come after me. It's even technically true." "Well, I'm glad you appreciate one of my suggestions," said TW. "But I am doubtful that it will stop Christina entirely. Icon agents are incredibly ruthless and determined. If you put up a wall in their path, they'll blow it up and use its remains to bash you over the head to make it easier to kidnap you." "It's not meant to stop her for good," I said. "It will just make life more inconvenient for her. She might even leave me alone, at least until I beat the Injectors and am able to devote my time to dealing with her." TW folded his arms in front of his chest. "Perhaps, but it is still distressing that Icon is here. I knew they would come to Rumsfeld eventually in search of the watch, but I didn't think they'd send an agent so soon. They must want the watch even more than I believed." I glanced at the watch. Christina said they wanted the watch because of its destructive power, because they didn't want it to fall into the wrong hands. What did she mean by that? "Nothing good," TW said dismissively. "Icon doesn't actually care about good and evil. They just want to keep powerful objects like the Trickshot Watch to themselves for their own purposes. It would be foolish to take anything they say too seriously." I nodded. "You're probably right. Still, this is pretty bad if you think about it. Not only are the Injectors after me, but so is Icon. And all because of this tiny little watch I got in the mail for my 16th birthday." "You don't seem particularly upset about it," said TW. "Why should I be?" I said. I puffed out my chest. "I'm Trickshot. I can take care of myself." You certainly took very good care of yourself against lethal injection, T observed, which is why, of course, the costume had to remove literal poison from your body. So what? I said, folding my arms in front of my chest. I didn't know what I was up against. And next time I fight that guy, I'll know all of his tricks and he won't be able to pull a fast one on me. If you fight him again, said TW, perhaps the injectors won't send him after you again. Why not? I said. He's the only injector who has even been a challenge to me so far. He's probably already looking for me again, even as we speak. I still wouldn't suggest actively seeking him out, said TW. You should resume your training before you do something reckless like this again. Otherwise, your next encounter with lethal or any of the other injectors won't end any better than this one. Yeah, sure, whatever, I said, waving off TW's concerns. I'm more worried about what my parents may have done when they realized I'm missing than whether I'll be able to beat those injector idiots. TW rubbed his forehead in exasperation. You are very frustrating to work with. I am trying to help you learn how to control your powers, but you are so reckless that I often wonder what the point is. Sorry for not being the perfect little student, I said. I just want to defeat the injectors, and maybe Icon, too, but definitely the injectors. I've already got a pretty good hang of my powers. I doubt I need much more training. Oh, you are going to need far more training than you have already received if you are going to be able to defend Rumsfeld from the threat Gregory warned of, said TW. I don't care how much talent you may have for these powers. If you are not going to learn how to use them, then you might as well not use them at all. I sighed. Listen, TW, I know that you're just trying to follow the last order grandfather gave to you, but you don't really seem to understand why I am the way I am. I'm not against training. I just prefer on-the-job training against actual bad guys versus what we were doing in the warehouse, you know? You need both, said TW, but fine. If you want to go and put your life in danger because you don't think you need proper training, then so be it. With that, TW flashed away, leaving me alone on the rooftop wondering what I said to make TW so upset with me. I tried to talk with him in my mind, but he wouldn't answer any of my questions. I might as well have been talking to myself for all the good it did. But whatever. I had no idea that an AI could get so emotional, but it didn't really matter. Maybe TW just needed a timeout until he calmed down and could act a bit more rationally. Besides, I was getting tired of talking to him, especially with the knowledge that if I didn't get back home soon, my parents would probably tear apart the whole city looking for me, and maybe even take down the injectors themselves if they thought they had me. So I flew into the air and headed north, just as TW said, though I could not help but feel a little guilty about the way I spoke to him. I just hoped that TW would not stay angry at me forever, because as much as he annoyed me, I really was going to need his help to master my powers in the coming weeks and months. Luckily, I ran into no other problems on my way back home. That was partly because I didn't fly all the way back. Yes, it was fairly early in the morning, but with the sun rising and people on the streets of Rumsfeld going to work and school, I would risk being spotted flying to my parents' house by hundreds of people. And if anyone saw me land in my parents' backyard, my secret identity would be toast. Instead, I landed in a discreet back alley, took off my costume, and used a combination of walking and public transportation to get back to my neighborhood. Though I got a few odd looks from random people on the streets or on the bus due to the fact that school was in session, no one really paid that much attention to me. To the average person, I was just an ordinary teenage boy traveling on the bus back home. Not a single person I saw even suspected I was Trickshot, which was exactly how I wanted it. My parents were worried sick when I stepped through the front door and announced that I was back. Mom nearly hugged the life out of me, while Dad demanded to know where I had been overnight and if I had been in danger. They told me that they had called the police to report I was missing as soon as they noticed that my bed was empty and that they had spent all morning calling up friends around the city to find out if anyone had seen me or knew where I was. I told my parents exactly what I told TW I was going to tell them, namely, that Christina Madison had kidnapped me in the middle of the night and took me to an abandoned apartment complex on the south side of Rumsfeld, where she intended to hold me hostage for money. Of course, I managed to escape through one of the windows when Christina wasn't looking and managed to make my way back home not long after that. Thankfully, my parents believed every word I said. Dad even promised to call up the police and tell them to call off the search now that I was back home safe and sound. Dad also said he would tell the police about Christina and where she had kidnapped me. I didn't object to that, mostly because I hoped that Christina would still be out cold by the time the police arrived and would therefore be unable to resist arrest. So I went up to my room to rest and made my parents promise to leave me alone so I could get some shut-eye, because I hadn't gotten any sleep last night. Dad, however, insisted on standing guard outside my room just in case Christina tried to get me again. It seemed unnecessary to me, because I didn't think that Christina would try to kidnap me again so soon after her first attempt, or that Dad could actually stop her, but I didn't object to it. If it made Dad feel better, then I was not against it. In truth, however, I didn't really need to sleep. I only went back to my room because I needed to do some research. More specifically, I needed to do some research on Icon, because I was curious to learn more about these people. I guess I could have asked TW, but he still wasn't in the mood to talk, and I wasn't sure when he would get over his hurt feelings, so I did an internet search to find out about them. Sadly, my internet search didn't show up a whole lot of results. There was the Wikipedia article about iconography, a website for a local business called Golden Icons, which specialized in making golden statues for sporting events, and various other things with the word icon somewhere in their title, but I didn't find anything on the actual organization itself. Guess I shouldn't have been surprised. If Icon was as secretive as TW said it was, then it only made sense that I wouldn't be able to find out about it from a public internet search. So I slept well that night, and the following morning found myself sitting in the passenger seat of the car, with Dad at the wheel, taking me to school himself this morning. I insisted that I didn't need him to drive me and that I would be okay just taking the bus, but Dad said that I would be safer driving with him. I guess Dad was still worried about the bus attack, as well as Christina, even though the injectors probably weren't going to attack the bus again and Christina was either in police custody or on the run, depending on what the police found when they raided her apartment. But Dad was impossible to argue with once he made up his mind, so I just sat quietly in the passenger seat of our four-door sedan, staring out the window at the houses as we drove past them. Dad drove much more carefully than usual, his eyes darting this way, and that as he tried to keep an eye on everywhere at once, probably keeping an eye out for any injectors who might be nearby. "Dad, relax," I said as we turned down a side street that would take us to Rumsfeld High. "The injectors aren't going to come after me. They're probably more interested in taking down Trickshot rather than me." "He can never be too safe, especially when dealing with the injectors," said Dad, wagging a finger at me. "And after that Christina woman kidnapped you, the last thing I want is for you to be in danger again, because I wasn't there to protect you." I sank back into my seat but said nothing, because I knew Dad wouldn't listen to anything I said. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if Dad was really worried about me because of Thomas. It must have been scary for him to think of losing two sons to the same gang. I wish I could have told him that he wouldn't need to worry about me anymore soon, but I couldn't do that just yet. "What do you think about that guy wearing grandfather's old costume?" I said, looking at Dad again. "The new Trickshot." Dad scowled. "I'm not sure what to think of him. On one hand, he did save your life from the injectors, but on the other hand, I don't like the fact that he's somehow gotten Papa's old costume and is wearing it. He must know where Papa is, which is why I want the police to arrest him so they can interrogate him and find out where Papa is." "I'd like to know where Grandfather is, too," I said. "But I don't think Trickshot is a bad guy or has anything to do with Grandfather's disappearance." "I didn't say that." Dad sighed. "I just don't really know what to make of him. For 10 years, Papa has been missing along with his costume and watch, only for a guy I don't know wearing his suit to appear out of nowhere and start taking names. Half the time I suspect it's an injector plot, but the other half, well, I don't know what's going on anymore." I nodded. "If it helps, the injectors don't seem to like him, which is a pretty good sign that he's not on their side at least." "Yeah, but it doesn't mean he's on our side either," said Dad. He glanced at me briefly. "Jack, I want you to keep your distance from this Trickshot guy." "Okay. Until we know if we can trust him or not. I want you to avoid seeing him too often." I smiled. "What, do you think Trickshot and I are best friends because he happened to save my life once?" "Not exactly," said Dad. "I just think that it's best to avoid those kinds of people. The last thing I want is for you to get involved in the superhero lifestyle, especially at such a young age." "What makes you think I want to be a superhero in the first place?" I said curiously. Dad shrugged. "Nothing. I'm just saying that young guys like you always have dreams of becoming superheroes and fighting crime and stuff like that. Trust me, as the son of an actual superhero, It's not nearly as glamorous as the movies or comic books make it out to be. I had always known that Dad didn't care much for superheroes, but I had never really known why until now. What do you mean? Dad stopped at a stoplight, allowing a large truck to pass in front of us. Papa was never really there for me. He was always too busy being a superhero to really be a father to me or my brothers. I didn't understand why growing up, but even now that I do understand better, I still wish he had carved out more time to be a father to us. I'm not a father yet, though. Dad looked at me like I was an idiot. You think I don't know that, but someday you will be a father, and I want you to be able to live a normal life without putting your life at risk fighting drug dealers and supervillains like Papa did. He could have died at any moment, leaving me, my brothers, and my mom with nothing. But he was defending the city, I said. He was making it safer for everyone, wasn't he? True, said Dad as the stoplight turned green and we resumed heading toward the school. But what's the point in making your city safe for your family if you never actually do anything with them? I would rather he had been a construction worker like me or hell even an accountant than going out and fighting crime all the time. Dad? And that's not even getting into what happened to Thomas, Dad continued. Kid wanted to be a super so badly that well, you know what he did. I've lost 2 family members to the super lifestyle and I don't want to lose another. Dad spoke really passionately when he said that, which surprised me, because Dad usually wasn't very passionate about, anything. He didn't look at me because he was too busy keeping his eyes on the road, but I could tell that if he didn't have to keep his eyes on the road, he would have been looking directly at me as he said every word. So promise me, Jack, said Dad, glancing at me. Promise me that you won't become a superhero. Can you promise me that? I hesitated. Technically speaking, I had already been a superhero for almost a week now. Not a licensed hero. True, but a superhero nonetheless. There was no way I could make or keep that promise to Dad, especially knowing that Grandfather wanted me to follow in his footsteps. But I couldn't just sneak out of this conversation or change the subject. Dad would notice, and he would probably drag the conversation back to the promise if I tried that. Trying my best not to look guilty, I looked Dad in the eyes and said, "Sure, Dad. You don't have to worry about me." Dad visibly relaxed. "Thanks, Jack. I figured you would say that, but I appreciate hearing you say it just the same." Dad patted me on the shoulder. I smiled as best as I could, but deep down I couldn't help but feel a little ashamed of myself for lying to his face like that. But I would make up for it when I defeated the injectors. Then I would tell Mom and Dad, and they would understand. At least I hope they would. Anyway. The end of the Legacy Superhero Season 1, Episode 6, The First Confrontation.